Issues that matter to us. Experts who can expand our understanding. This is Left, Right and Center.
मैं ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਹੋਸਟ ਮੋਨਿਕਾ ਓਬਰੋਏ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਲੈਫਟ ਰਾਈਟ ਐਂਡ ਸੈਂਟਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਮੈਂ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਐਲਬਰਟਾ ਐਨਡੀਪੀ ਦੇ ਕੈਲਗਰੀ ਬਫਲੋ ਤੋਂ ਐਮਐਲਏ ਜੋ ਸੀਸੀ ਹੋਰਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਕਈ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਹੋਈਆਂ ਦ ਐਲਬਰਟਾ ਇਨਵੈਸਟਮੈਂਟ ਮੈਨੇਜਮੈਂਟ ਕਾਰਪੋਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਬਾਰੇ ਐਲਬਰਟਾ ਦੇ ਬਿੱਲ 1 ਤੇ ਬਿੱਲ 29 ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਐਲਬਰਟਾ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੈਲਥ ਕੇਅਰ ਦੇ ਭਵਿੱਖ ਬਾਰੇ ਸੂਬੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੱਧ ਰਹੀ ਬੇਰੋਜ਼ਗਾਰੀ ਤੇ ਵੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਚਿੰਤਾ ਵਿਖਾਈ ਆਓ ਇਹ ਪੂਰੀ ਇੰਟਰਵਿਊ ਵੇਖਦੇ ਹਾਂ Good morning, Mr. Cece. Thank you for your time today.
I really appreciate the opportunity, Monika. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions that relate to Heritage Trust Fund and Aimco's performance, these two things. And in October 2015, Mr. Cece, when the first budget was released, NDP's first budget, and you as the finance minister said, and I quote, to focus a prudent but significant proportion of our province's heritage fund to directly invest in Alberta's growth. 3% of the heritage fund, that is 540 million, will be targeted to growth-oriented companies in Alberta. This was in 2015. I would like to know, what is the status of heritage fund now?
The Heritage Fund now, the report just came out, Monika, so your listeners and viewers can check that out online. In 2015, if you recall, we were going through a significant recession in Alberta as a result of the world price drop in oil. We lost about 4.5% of our gross domestic product in 15 and about 3.5 in 2016. So we had to get some liquidity or get some cash available to invest in Alberta companies. And what we targeted the Heritage Trust Fund for, they make investments through the Aimco all the time. We said, Aimco, please focus some of your investments with that fund into Alberta businesses, not just those that were struggling, but those that wanted to grow and needed access to investment. So that's what we did. We, as you correctly stated, it was about $514 or so million was targeted for that. Most of those monies went into Alberta companies to help take them through the low times of the GDP. So it did quite well. That we called it the Alberta Growth Advantage or something like that.
AGM.
Was it? Yeah.
Alberta Growth, yeah.
Okay.
Mandate. So, Alberta Growth Mandate, AGM.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Other things we did to bolster Alberta was we invested a lot of money into infrastructure throughout this province. We made sure that people's programs and services like healthcare and education stayed strong because you always need those things. And through the infrastructure, we made sure Alberta companies, for the most part, and Albertans were working, building schools, building roads, building infrastructure in communities. So we really mitigated or softened the drop in the economy that was taking place as a result of public sector investment in this province. And the Alberta Growth Management Fund was part of that.
Mr. Cece, the report that came out of Aimco last week, the report was released. And earlier you had said that the report is definitely a bad report. And do you think that Aimco has actually done that bad, considering that the atmosphere was so bad as far as COVID is concerned? All the stocks were down. Everything was down. So do you still believe that Aimco could have done better?
I do, because they had a strategy, volatility investments, we called it. So that strategy overemphasized Aimco's ability to buy distressed stocks, as I understand it, and frankly, they failed. That strategy was not a good one. There are apparently people who have been let go from Aimco. I know that there's been some challenges at the board around that strategy. So yeah, I think they could have done a lot better. And the fact that the government and the UCP have put even more stock or more value from the teacher's pension and other things at Aimco at this time is very worrying for obviously the teachers and those who rely on their long-term pensions or will rely on pensions through the return of those monies from Aimco. They didn't want that to happen because they were perfectly doing that on their own through the Alberta Teachers Retirement Fund. So yes, I do think the strategy that Aimco kind of bet a lot on has not proven very successful, and they need to obviously they need to amend themselves so that they don't do that in the future.
Mr. Cece, let's hypothetically believe that the CPP money also comes in the hands of Aimco. How scared should Albertans be now?
Well, that's a bad hypothetical, Monika.
It is.
It's a one we're pushing hard against, and we're trying to, and 36,000 Albertans have signed a petition called handsoffmycpp.ca to have their say, so that they can say to Jason Kenney and the UCP, keep your hands off my pension. I'm very happy with where it's at. The CPP Investment Board is doing a good job. There's no reason to move it into Alberta. Mr. Kenney likes to say, aren't we just as smart in this province like Quebec has their own pension plan? Of course we're smart in this province, but it's not broke. So why would we try and fix it with the strategy he's presenting? And the fact that Aimco has had some struggles over the last little while is another reason why we should not do this at this time. So I know that my colleague Christina Gray, MLA up here in Edmonton, has done a tremendous job in meeting with people who are concerned. We brought 17 lawyers' boxes filled with petitions over to the Premier's office and stacked them up at his door and said, Mr. Premier, we hope you look at some of these concerns that are brought forward, but we don't know if he did. I wrote a little note saying, Mr. Premier, please read these.
So what is your anticipation now?
Well, my anticipation is that Albertans will continue to express their worry that the UCP can try and get their hands on this pension. We don't want that to happen. So we're going to continue to put this issue in front of the government, in front of everybody who's satisfied and happy and confident that their pension is in the hands of the Canadian Pension Plan.
Mr. Cece, let's talk about Bill 1 now, which is an act, the Critical Infrastructure Defense Act, and protecting infrastructure from illegal activity. What's wrong in that?
What's wrong is that it's taking people's rights away to protest, and Canadians protest or Albertans protest in legal ways. This is taking that legal right to protest away from Albertans. So it's making their action to express their disappointment, their dissatisfaction with, say, an employer or an issue that the government has brought up illegal. And that's frankly not constitutional. And we believe that we'll continue to see people upset with this. Kill Bill 1 protests will continue, I believe. I think ultimately the government is going to have to change this bill because it is unconstitutionally wrong to prevent people from expressing their dissatisfaction. And they're doing the same thing in Labor Bill. I think the bill is 32. They're doing this. They're ramping up the illegality of regular activity against employers. And that's just not what Albertans signed up for. This wasn't in their platform. Their platform was pipelines, economy, and jobs. What they seem to be doing is making it harder for people to express their dissent with the government's actions, and that's fundamentally unconstitutional.
While we are on this topic, Mr. Cece, the overtime thing, not paying the overtime and banking those hours, Don't you think that is a very prudent, that is for a prudent cause and that can be done, that is workable?
Well, what's not workable is that now an employer can do this without even discussing it with their employee. So we, again, Christina Gray, our MLA up here, is right on top of these issues. And, she has many people who are saying, they're turning back the clock and tilting it in favor of employers in this province. And, it's putting money back into taking money out of the workers' pockets because there's other provisions in this bill that are really, really bad. For instance, if a person quits a job, they used to have to be paid out in 3 days. And now, with this bill, they won't have to be paid out for several weeks. So how does a person manage when their employer can hold on to their legally made pay and hold on to it for weeks, as opposed to saying, okay, I've separated from this workplace. I got my last paycheck. They don't have to give them their last paycheck under this bill for several weeks.
Let's talk about healthcare in Alberta now, Mr. Cece. The physician's fee schedule, that has been growing, but it has been growing slower as compared to other provinces. This is one fact. And Minister Shandro says that he's going to release a sunshine list. That is pretty threatening. Why does this have to be in a threatening tone? What effect will that sunshine list have?
Well, you're right. Minister Shandro, from very early on in this government, has been doing all sorts of things to demonize physicians in this province. Not only physicians, but healthcare workers, nurses. He is trying to set up a negative feeling towards people who, in a pandemic, we have to rely on even more, Monika. So when we were government, we started ramping down the increase in the health budget from 6%, where the Conservative Party of Alberta left it, to 3% for the years that we were there. So we got a more manageable, relationship with all parts of the health system because we negotiated with them directly. Mr. Shandro is not taking a negotiated approach. He's taking a demonization approach, make people mad at them so that they get cowed and say, you're right, we'll take anything you offer us. Well, he's finding out that isn't working with Alberta's doctors and with Albertans generally. We are going to see even more expression of outrage to this government and Mr. Shandro. Mr. Shandro must go because he's not helping the situation.
Mr. Shandro is also planning on hiring some international doctors to find a substitute for the doctors that are not cooperating here with him. So what are your thoughts on hiring international doctors as substitutes for doctors already working in this province?
Well, I think a recent survey by the Alberta Medical Association pointed to 42% of those surveyed felt they wanted to go somewhere else. So obviously, if that happens, there'll be a significant deficit of physician care in this province. Foreign trained doctors international doctors come into Alberta all the time. It does take a significant amount of time to get their credentials together, but they can do it, and they have been doing it. I would like to see the AMA and international doctors work more closely, but not because of the result that we're pushing doctors out of this province. I think that's the wrong thing to do, and I think the minister's taken the wrong approach. I think international trained doctors are helpful because of our diverse community we have, and many people from many backgrounds have great comfort with international doctors, and they're skilled. But to come into this province as a result of the Minister of Health not physically, but targeting doctors specifically is not a good work environment for anybody coming into the province to start a job here, if you can imagine.
Yeah. Let's talk about Bill 29 now, Mr. Ceci, the Local Authorities Election Amendment Act. The bill, UCP says Bill 29 will level playing field for local elections. NDP says it opens Alberta's democracy up to dark money. Your thoughts?
My thoughts are, when I first got elected in Calgary in 1995, there were at least 5 of us who got elected to a 15-member council. That's 33% turnover of that council in 95. And there has been a regular turnover since that time. And, citizens in a ward, and I was Ward 9, they vote for who they think can best represent them. I was fortunate to be returned 5 times in Calgary and be an alderman on 5 different councils. And that's how it works. You put yourself before the electorate, you say what you're going to do, and the best person gets elected. Now, what the UCP want to do, and what Jason Kenney wants to do, is he wants to tilt the playing field in favor of those with deep pockets who can fund as many candidates as they want. So in Calgary, for instance, there's 14 city councillors and 1 mayor.
Yeah.
A person under their rules that they're bringing in can put up to $10,000 per candidate, and they can fund as many candidates. So a person could spend $150,000. One person could do that. That's not fair. That's anti-democratic, and it just shows what a fabrication this municipal affairs minister is trying to spin, a web he's trying to spin, that he's making things better. What he's doing is he's putting his friends and insiders in the driver's seat in future elections, not only in Calgary, but all over this province and at the school board level too.
Mr. Cece, about unemployment in Alberta. We are second most unemployed province. 15.5% of our workforce is sitting at home. In this present scenario, what future do you see for Albertans going back to work, getting back to work?
Well, for those 382,000 Albertans who are currently unemployed in this province, I see the UCP not doing that much for them, frankly. They do not have a robust recovery plan. They are continuing to double down on all of the things that have got us into this pandemic and unemployment crisis in the first place. Namely, they are spending their time and energy trying to make sure that oil and gas and their corporation friends are benefited from government investment. What we were doing when we were government, frankly, Monika, is we were diversifying the economy. We're looking at different sectors, like the tech sector, like the entertainment sector, like the tourism sector, like the healthcare sector, like education and childcare, frankly, to make sure that Albertans, whether they had an interest in any of those sectors, they could find some way of getting into them. And we did a lot of investment in post-secondary so they could get those jobs in those different sectors. Now, the government is not focusing at all on childcare and the needs of women to get back into the workforce. And many of those 382,000 or 15.5% unemployed Albertans are women, and they're struggling to get back into work because there is no viable support for children in their communities. So these are the things that the government is doing wrong, and we're going to keep pushing to make sure that they get it right.
Mr. Cece, I'm sure the official opposition, NDP, is doing a wonderful job, no doubt about it. But is there anything that the government is doing right? What do you think the government is doing perfectly well, and especially in COVID crisis? How satisfied are you with the way UCP worked?
I'm not satisfied with the UCP's efforts in the COVID crisis. I think places like, our neighbors to the west in BC have it more together in terms of the support. I think this government, what they're doing right is looking to the federal government and getting the support from the federal government. The federal government is frankly stepping in and helping a lot of Albertans, and they're looking around the country to bring the best into this province. So if anything, they're good at following the lead of best practices.
Mr. Cece, if you were the finance minister today, how differently would you have handled the situation?
Well, I'd be with my colleagues, Rachel Notley as the Premier, and the collection of ministers that we had was extremely talented. So we would be looking to support regular Albertans and their needs, like childcare, like healthcare, and like education. You know, there's still many people who are confused about what the education plan is for their children in September. And so we would have a lot more clarity, and I would tell you that Albertans could know that we'd have their back instead of the UCP, which seems to have the back of corporations and wealthy insiders.
One last question: what is your advice to people in Northeast Calgary?
Look to MLA Irfan Sabir as the champion for Northeast Calgary. He is standing up in the legislature daily and pushing Jason Kenney and the government to say, look, this is a crisis. You need to do more than just tell people if you can't get in touch with your insurance agent, call the ombudsman or call somebody like that. You know, people need support. There are uninsured losses that is a struggle for the people in Northeast Calgary. And going back to your previous question, the NDP government, if we were in government, we would have the backs, and you would know that Northeast Calgary is important, valued, and the people there would be supported.
Thank you for your time today. Appreciate it. Thanks. Bye.
Red FM.